dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah.
He's a grown person, and I'm a kid.
That's one of the things. This is a full-grown man who thinks that he's going to overturn the scientific consensus on almost everything, and he gets things wrong that you learn in first grade.
So, we had the honor of speaking to the amazing Dapper Dinosaur from the YouTube channel with the same name. What he doesn't know about dinosaurs is not worth knowing. And me, a little Miss Now, we had questions.
So a lot of what I do is debunking a particular brand of pseudoscience that is...
I made a mistake when recording his voice, and all I got left was the sound from our external microphone catching the sound coming from my computer speaker. So, what did you say it sounded like when you spoke?
It sounded like he lives in a jar.
It does sound like he lives in a jar. I wonder how that would be like.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dapper the Smart Dinosaur! Dapper the Smart Dinosaur. He was even nicer than we could have hoped for. Dapper, I guess he drives a car. He's a little scary, so we put him in a jar.
Hi, this is Dr. Now from the future. I'm here to fix the sound of Dapper Dinosaur. Let me hear that sound again.
Debunking a particular...
Yeah, it definitely sounds like he's in a jar. So let me just push a few buttons. Alright.
Debunking a particular brand of pseudoscience that is very...
Yeah, now it sounds perfect. Alright, I'll hand it over to Dapper again. He's about to explain what kind of people he's debunking on his channel.
These are people who say that, especially evolution, is not a real thing, for the most part, except some small parts of it. Like they might say that coyotes and jackals and wolves might have a common dog ancestor, but they don't have any common ancestry with, say, raccoons or bears, or cats, or especially not humans. That's completely unacceptable. And also, the young Earth thing comes in, and they'll say that the Earth and the universe usually are only about 6,000 years old, and that most of the geology of the Earth is a direct result of a global flood. That's described in the earlier chapters in Genesis.
Yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah, that entire story is not so well thought through, and I can't believe that some people actually believe that that actually happened. With Dapper, we talked about one of your favorite bedtime stories. There's about a Brontosaurus egg that hatches.
Yes. And it is super tiny, but then it becomes
gigantic.
gigantic.
A gigantic Brontosaurus. But when I was growing up, I learned that the Brontosaurus was not a proper dinosaur genus. And I was about to tell you about that fact. But before I said that, I went into Google and said, and I discovered that now it is. Can you read
Yeah.
that? Now, apparently, the Brontosaurus is a proper dinosaur genus.
What happened was basically when Brontosaurus was first described, the description and the fossils that were available at the time didn't really sufficiently differentiate from another genus, Apatosaurus. And for that reason, Brontosaurus was determined to be what's called a junior synonym of Apatosaurus. So what a junior synonym is: if you only have one genus, with one name, and anything else that you try to rename that actually belongs that genus, that new name doesn't count because it's younger, and it's referring the same thing. That's why it's called junior, because that's for younger and synonym, because it means that those two words mean the same thing. So junior synonyms are always tossed out. But more recently there's been a reanalysis of the Brontosaurus remains as well as better findings. It turns out that a lot of scientists now say this actually is distinct enough from the genus of Apatosaurus that we think that Brontosaurus actually can be its own distinct genus. Now, of course, here's the real secret. Genuses are made up. And technically there's no one line where you can say, okay, this is distinct enough to get a genus. It's basically just like most of the scientists in the field are like, this seems different enough, okay, it's fine, different gene, different genera, and there are objectively correct and incorrect ways you can organize animals, but where you put the names doesn't really matter, as long as the shape of the tree remains the objectively right one.
So, the things we know about dinosaurs today has changed a lot since I went to school. And if it weren't for YouTubers like Dapper, I might not have been interested in updating my knowledge at all. Since I'm probably not alone in this, I wondered if Dapper felt some responsibility to get things right.
It's definitely true. I feel a pretty big responsibility to try to be as accurate as I can be. Of course, I make mistakes. And I try to, if I notice a mistake or someone calls me out on a mistake and I double check, and it is a mistake, I try to make corrections. I'll add a pinned comment and whatnot, but one thing is even independent of a responsibility to the public. If I get things badly wrong, my goodness, I will never hear the end of it in my comments.
Yeah, that's good.
It's just self-preservation. I don't want to have to go through 50 comments on calling me out on the same mistake. But no, I think it is important, because I think that it's valuable for a sense of context of the natural world and the history of life on Earth, that we have a public that is reasonably well informed and has reasonably accurate ideas about ancient life. People should know that Velociraptor was completely feathery. They should know that Mosasaurus wasn't the size of an aircraft carrier like it is in the Jurassic World movies. They should know that Pteranodon didn't have any teeth. In fact, the name means toothless wing. So Jurassic Part 2, when you give teeth to your Pteranodon, you're defeating the full point of the name. So things like that. And I do think that there is that responsibility because I think, like I was saying about the context of life on Earth and everything, I think that it's even important for things like environmentalism. People will say things like, okay, previous animals have existed under these conditions that we're creating on Earth, like the Mesozoic. Let's look at the rate of climate change over the course of this whole time, and how animals are able to adapt to it during that time where the climate is shifting over the course of tens of millions of years, and it's still causing these extinctions that we can see, and so these whole roots of organisms are just gone. But now you're doing the same thing over the course of a few hundred years instead of tens of millions of years. Why might this be a problem? And if your entire view of the past is just scaly monsters, then who cares? But if you have an idea, that's actually informed by the idea that these are real animals that had their own lives and they were doing the things that modern animals do. They were raising their young, they were hunting, they were socializing with each other, fighting territorial battles, things like that. I think it becomes more real when you see the history of extinctions and what caused them and what's causing an extinction now. Do you really want to live through the next mass extinction? You're doing it right now.
Right.
Maybe we should pull back from that.
With great knowledge comes great responsibility.
Yeah, we just said that he's just like Spider-Man.
He's like Spider-Man.
But he doesn't have the web, so that's why he's not like Spider-Man.
He's Dino Man.
Yes, he is Dino Man.
Then it was time for your special questions for Dapper Dino.
Have you watched our video about Matt Powell?
I did. Yes, I thought it was pretty funny. Matt Powell is, my goodness, he is an especially silly man. Because he thinks that there's air in space because the sun needs oxygen to burn.
Sure, but in space, wouldn't it be a different scenario based on the fact that the space and the air in the space is much different than the air we have here in our area? So I mean, it's just, we have to take that into consideration. There's so many things you'd have to take into consideration because we are not. I mean, if we went into space, we'd suffocate.
Are you suggesting that because things need oxygen to burn? And there's no air in space, but because it's a fusion, the oxygen that you're referencing isn't required for that activity to take place.
Really?
I'm not kidding. He was in a debate with my friend Jackson Wheat, and he talked about how the air in space must be different, since the sun still needs oxygen to burn.
That sounds like that flat earther, whatever he was called.
JM Truth.
JM Truth, yeah, exactly.
Fire, the element by which the sun exerts its energy, and I don't care if it's nuclear fission or what, it's still fire, okay, needs what element, folks, in order to continue to burn? oxygen.
JM Truth has the same idea that the sun must eat oxygen to burn because it's literally a ball of fire.
Okay.
It must be a lot of coal or something. That's just funny that.
That is one of the most dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah.
He's a grown person, and I'm a kid.
Relax.
That's one of the things. This is a full-grown man who thinks that he's going to overturn the scientific consensus on almost everything, and he gets things wrong that you learn in first grade.
Exactly.
Of course there's not air in space. That's a no air place.
That's kind of the whole point of space, is there's no air in it.
The other week we visited the Museum of Natural History. You had a question about the T-Rex, because everything about the T-Rex is big, except for
The arms.
the arms.
Why do T-Rexes have so short arms?
Right.
That's a great question. And there are a whole lot of answers. But the problem is we don't know which ones, if any of them, are right. So I can give you some ideas. But I can't tell you which one is definitely it, or if it's even any one of them, or maybe it's more than one of them. So one idea is that T-Rex simply didn't use them that much. So when we look at ideas about the biomechanics of T-Rex and marks on, say, fossils, where T-Rex has either fed or scavenged of them, what we tend to see is the idea that T-Rex was chasing things down, using its feet to restrain prey by just pressing on them, essentially stepping on what it was eating, and then using its mouth and especially the teeth at the very front, growing from what's called the premaxilla. It's the little jaw at the very front of the top jaw, and using those to scrape off some meat and then swallow it. And the bigger teeth were used to do things like tear the animal into sort of chunks, bite through an arm or something, so you get smaller bits. But in all of that, what's the arms doing? And the answer seems to be probably nothing. So it might just be that T-Rex really wasn't using its arms. So it had no selective pressure to keep big arms relative to body size. So, over time they just, through bits of mutation, with essentially no selection pressures, shrunk. We can see that in modern animals. For instance, if you take an ostrich, you know, it's a gigantic bird. The biggest bird in the world. Everything about that bird is big, except for its wings. Its wings barely do anything at all. There's also the odd thing that, unlike in, say, Abelisaurus or Carnotaurus, which also had tiny little arms, the arms of T-Rex they still look fully functionally developed. If you look at them in isolation, they don't look like the degenerate arms of some creature that's not using its arms anymore. They look like fully formed, fully muscled, fully articulable dinosaur arms. So, it seems like they were using them for something, and a couple of the big ideas are that it might be that some prey could be held close to body to prevent it from struggling. If that prey was too small, maybe to be stepped on, or if it was just quick enough that they needed to grab it, and then they could use the head, their mouth to dispatch it. Other things are, it might have been used for signaling or positioning during mating. Sometimes they hugged each other essentially. Or, one is that maybe it just helped T-Rex get up. Maybe it just gave it a little bit of a push when it was on the ground sitting so that it could just stand up a little bit easier. But unfortunately, all of these ideas, as well as others, are all speculative and we're not sure which one, if any of them is right. And like I said, maybe it's more than one.
You had 3 questions about the pterodactyl. Because the pterodactyl, up until we spoke to Dapper Dino, was your favorite dinosaur, right?
Pterodactyl. I am flying, look at me.
So you wanted to know, did it have feathers? Was it a bird? And why is it spelled with a P?
We'll start with a P. So it starts with a P because it's actually from the Greek word for wing, and the Greek word for wing starts with the letter pi, and then the letter tau, and it was actually pronounced that way. It was pteros in ancient Greek, and pterodactylus actually means wing finger. Dactyles is for finger from Latin, and ptero is from wing in Greek. So Pterodactylus is the genus name of a particular pterosaur, because Pterodactylus is the great common name. The scientific name for this group is pterosaur, and they're also not actually dinosaurs. They're closely related to dinosaurs, but they are not actually dinosaurs.
Ah, there.
Wait.
That's the dinosaur that's not a dinosaur.
Dinosaurs are defined by certain anatomical characteristics, and we don't have to get into all the weeds about what all those are. Pterosaurs actually lack several of them, which makes them not actually dinosaurs. Also why they don't have feathers, because only dinosaurs evolved feathers. Now, what they do have is a sort of furry coating, what are called pycnofibers. So, if you saw a pterosaur in real life, you would probably think it looked like it was furry, and these pycnofibers, we're not sure if they share a common, fluffy ancestor with dinosaur feathers, or they were independently evolved as fluffy coatings, because the first dinosaur feathers are also just strands of fluff. So, right now that's still a really big question is, does the fluff of pterosaurs, pycnofibers, share a common fluffy ancestor with the proto-feathers of dinosaurs? And I don't know, no one does. There are good arguments on both sides. And, honestly, we need more fossils. Of course, we need more fossils is always true for everything about dinosaurs. We need more fossils. Now, as to whether or not they are birds, no, because they're not dinosaurs, and all birds have to be dinosaurs.
When I was your age, I thought that all grown-ups were wise and smart. You know, like me. I thought they were sensible, smart, nice people. But as I grew up, I got more and more disappointed.
Because people were not. Boo. Boo.
But I think maybe I have prepared you so that you get disappointed now and not disappointed when you grew up. There are good people in the world, and there are, you know, people that are not so smart. But your question was this, and we should ask this question in a nice way, I think.
Are young Earthers stupid, or are they lying, or are they misled?
I think it depends. So most people who believe in young Earth creationism are people who are going around, even reading what passes for technical literature among young Earthers. They're just sitting in the pews of churches every Sunday and they don't think about it much. They're not really interested in paleontology or geology or something. They just have regular jobs. They work at the bank or at the store or something like that. And I think those people are just misinformed. So they've just been told the wrong thing by people that they trust. I don't think that they're necessarily unintelligent, because this just isn't something they want to think about. So like even really smart people are really stupid about some things, right? Like I know a whole lot about some things, but I don't know very much about, say, like sports. If you ask me, oh, who's this basketball player? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't. So I think that's most young Earthers. Now, you do get to some, say, Matt Powell or his friend, Ron Matt, who are. It's hard for me to believe that they are not unintelligent, because the things they say are so nonsensical. Like they often don't even make sense on their own terms. But then there are the types like Andrew Snelling, who I could demonstrate are liars. Andrew Snelling is an American. Okay, he's an Australian turned American geologist, who I know has an actual legitimate PhD in geology, and who I also know repeatedly lies about geology to his audiences, because I know he knows better. Because he said as much himself. So there is all three types.
So it was really interesting to listen to Dapper Dino talk about dinosaurs in a very detailed manner. And I thought you asked really good questions. And it seems that he was impressed by your questions as well. Good job. But you had more things you wanted to know from Dapper.
But what do you usually call this?
So in the United States, which is where I'm from, we would probably call those either Pringles or chips, or we might specify that they're like Pringles chips, but I would probably mostly call them Pringles. But if asked what kind of food Pringles are, I would say it's a chip.
Well, the person from the UK we talked to yelled at us, because obviously these should be called
crisps.
Hey, that's
exactly.
right.
So that's one of them. I would say one of the more well-known dialectical differences between UK English and US English and even Canadian English, North American English, and so in North America, those things are usually called chips. In the UK, they're usually called crisps. I believe they're also usually called crisps in Australia, but I'm not very confident on that.
Well, Little Miss Now, she's as American can be, even though she has never been there. She has watched too much YouTube, I think.
Yes, American English is very prevalent online and in media. Movies produced in the United States are some of the most popular English language movies in the world. English media, English social media, is often from America, so I think that it has an outside presence in terms of when people are learning English. The kind of English that they learn in school often is British English, but the kind of English that they're actually exposed to in real world is often American English. And it's like that like for me in Spanish. I can speak Spanish pretty well with people from Mexico, or Guatemala, or Puerto Rico, but when it comes to people from, say, Spain, I'm lost. I have no idea what's going on.
Okay, so was it called chips or crisps?
He said chip.
Yeah. The most important question of the day. What was that?
Does he like Dr. Pepper?
Does he like Dr. Pepper? Let's see.
Do you like Dr. Pepper?
I do. I don't actually end up having it all that often, but I do like it. I like the spicy flavor, but not in the sense of like it has heat, but in the sense of there are a lot of different spices that go into the flavor mix, and so I like that sort of complex flavor that it has. But I actually don't drink a whole lot of soda or pop or whatever you want to call the fizzy drinks, but when I do, it is one of the ones I go to.
I hope you like this interview we had with, I'm going to say Dr. Dapper, I mean... Not Dr. Dapper. Dapper Dino. And let us know if you want to see something similar in the future. Hopefully then with better audio. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye!
Hi, this is Dr. Now again, from the future. Did you know that Nowpinion have their own Patreon account? www.patreon.com/Nowpinion. If you want to support what they do, take part of the creative process, considering sponsoring them with a couple of bucks per month. See you later. Dino Man, does whatever a Dino Man can. Can he swing from a web?
No, he can't because he's too big.
Watch out! Here comes the Dino Man!